Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Naweed, and everyone for hosting this and for giving me the opportunity to also present. I'm the founder and CEO of Massoni Advisory. We are a company, an advisory company, who help other businesses in the setup within the kingdom, in their localization and local content efforts. I'm ex-AT Kearney and KPMG, and within the last 10 years, I've been here in the region working with authorities like the LCGPA, the Local Content Authority, the Ministry of Industry, and others to support localization efforts and the policy making around it. As I always say to our partners, our clients, and as you know by now, by the end of today, localization is not anymore a compliance checkbox. It is a competitive differentiator. And if I get... And why is that? Obviously, the demand right now in the kingdom for projects, giga projects, mega projects is massive. Localization means that you gain competitive advantage over your competitors and the ecosystem of players around you. And the sooner you do it, the better, because you earn early advantage and you secure frameworks, contracts with the government, and so on. Now, within the next probably 8 to 10 minutes, I'm going to try to answer these 4 questions. First, what is localization and what is local content? It's more like a theoretical background about it because people confuse these 2 words. Second, why Saudi is pushing it and what are the benefits really to the economy? And third, how does Saudi and the government and semi-government players try to incentivize local content and localization? And finally, what does it all mean for you? Now, anyone who knows the difference between local content and localization, raise a hand. All right, no one, maybe everyone is tired. But localization is different from local content, obviously. Localization answers the question as to where is the work done. It's obviously about bringing steps of your value chain into the kingdom, and whether those steps are manufacturing steps, QA, testing, localization means bringing them into the country and bring value to the country. Local content answers the question as how much work is local. Local content is also called in-country value in other countries, is the share of the value of the spend that you capture locally within Saudi. Localization enables local content. Local content is measured through a score. We'll see that later. If you localize steps of your value chain, you will increase also your local content score. We'll see that later, why it's so important. Local content score, every company in Saudi that goes to LCGPA to get this local content certificate gets a local content score associated to them. It's the sum of 4 factors. So how much you're paying local salaries, how much procurement of goods and services you're doing here in Saudi Arabia, how much local depreciation is accounted for in the kingdom, and how much capacity you build in Saudi. And by capacity, we mean supplier development programs, R&D spend, and the likes. All of this divided by the total spend. So it's a percentage. It's a score that goes from 0 to 100. Why Saudi Arabia is pushing local content, and maybe for another discussion could be why Europe and the US are not, or maybe they're doing it in some other ways, but why we talk so much about localization here. Now, I wanted to take a more scientific approach to this. Every country will try to raise their GDP because the GDP growth means health of an economy, of any economy. GDP is made by 5 factors. I won't go through them, but what do the local content policies enable? With regards to the investment, obviously building in-country capabilities and buying machinery and equipment will increase your local content, will give value to the economy. 2, private consumption. If you hire more local Saudis, more local talent, these people will have more purchasing power and hence will enable higher private consumption. Maybe a neutral effect on government consumption, but the biggest effect that local content policies have is on the trade balance, export minus imports. Local content enables companies to manufacture more, fill their internal capacity, and hence be able to export abroad. And obviously, to reduce the number of imports. Imports in any country are seen as a leakage to the economy. We don't want to import, we want to manufacture locally. Why? Because it increases your GDP. To the point that the Royal Court in Riyadh established component leaders. For each of these 5 components of the GDP, there is an authority or a government entity who is tasked to increase or optimize that component. And you see them at the bottom. Of course, the Local Content and Government Procurement Authority, LCGPA, is tasked for reviewing the imports and hence, as a result, building local content policies for import substitution. Now, within Saudi, what are the 3 pillars that from the Vision 2030 local content enables? 1, diversification and non-oil sector growth. As you all know, they're trying to rely less and less on oil, so industries like yours are the perfect candidates to raise non-oil sector growth. And hence they set some precise targets about private sector consumption, the ratio to the GDP, and others. Second, supply chain localization and export competitiveness. Again, clear targets against each of them. And then jobs, skills, knowledge economy, bringing Saudi from mostly expats coming and work here to hiring local manpower and training Saudis. Now, how does Saudi practically incentivize local content? There is one word to answer this question. Anyone? What is the tool, what is the delivery mechanism that Saudi uses to increase local content and localization? Anyone? Incentives. Maybe. Anyone else? It's procurement. Now, within government, within PIF-owned company standards, local content is embedded. You're going to have local content requirements that you need to fulfill in order to win a tender. And that's why it's so important to think about it. There's a couple of, or 3 entities or 4 entities that are responsible for developing the policies and the laws and regulations with regards to local content. MOF first, LCGPA, Monsha'at, and CMA, they develop the so-called local content regulations. XPRO on the far right is the central procurement body, is the entity that regulates and executes procurement at government level. And then the how. What are the mechanisms that Saudi puts in place within those government tenders to incentivize local content? It's a complex discussion. There are 6 key mechanisms, like price preference, mandatory list, minimum threshold for your target local content score, minimum threshold for the baseline, local content weighting in the evaluation. Just to say that whenever you bid for tenders, you're going to have one or more of these mechanisms being applied. As an example, price preference. If you prove in your answer, in your bid to the government, that you're actually sourcing local products, you're going to have a tender advantage. So your score, when they evaluate your bid, is going to be higher by 10% weighted across the products that you have. Let me focus on local content weight in commercial evaluation, because maybe that's the most striking one. For large projects, and the definition of large has changed over time, it's a threshold value, your bid to the government will be evaluated obviously based on your technical score and the commercial score. The commercial score is this: the financial evaluation outcome is 60% times your competitiveness, how low are your prices versus your competitors, and 40% is weighted across local content dimensions. So for big projects, you're going to be asked to submit a target local content score over the next year. You're going to be required to submit a baseline local content score. So what is your local content score today? So you see how important it is. And if you don't, in 1 year, after submitting your target local content score, they're going to come and check if you have achieved that local content score. Otherwise, there are penalties, and those penalties are linked to the contract value. So it's becoming increasingly important. What does it mean for you? Checklist of items. Own your local content score. Appoint someone within your organization that is accountable for thinking and for managing local content. Map where your local content is leaking. Break down your value chain. Even the steps of the value chain that you're not controlling, the most upstreams, the most downstreams and logistics, see if there are opportunities to localize or to increase local content. Speak with the suppliers so that they help you as well and you help them. 3, pick 2 or 3 improvement moves and commit to those. 4, assess the best Saudi funding options. For localization programs, there are dozens of funding options. We'll see them in the later slide that you can apply to if you want to localize your manufacturing, if you want to localize your test, assembly facility, anything like that. And finally, run local content like a program. It's a long-term game. And achieving a higher local content score doesn't happen tomorrow. It's a 3 to 6 to 9 months program, depending on the size of your business. So what is the portfolio of incentives that you can consider? We have seen people from NEOM today. We have seen people from the WIAD program in Aramco. We have the National Semiconductor Hub, of course. And this is just a non-exhaustive list of programs, from soft loans, CapEx grants, tax incentives, special economic zones, and the likes. I will not list them all. And again, this is probably 1% of what is out there. If you think about companies like the Madden, SABIC, STC, they all run their own local content programs. And navigating through that ecosystem is complex. It's not easy. But being your industry, an industry that is horizontal to many industries, then obviously there are so many opportunities out there that once you know them, you can get funding, you can get grants, inshallah. So scan the QR code. These are my contact details.